What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor Brian Wagner. This week on the show, we got Joe Morrison. Joe, what's going on?
What's up, Brian? Great to be here, man.
Great to have you on. It's a race week here. You are going to Norwalk, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. Can't wait. We'll be arriving Thursday afternoon, getting set up and prepared to slug it out. 18 Top Fuel cars signed up as of today, so we know that if we don't want to get eaten by the bear, we got to outrun the two slowest campers, right?
Exactly. And what's funny is this is going to air after the event, so we'll be able to go through and then look at it, post and kind of see how everything plays out. But it's always fun to talk to racers during race week because at this point you're still excited to go, and things are still going according to plan, right?
That's right. They can't go wrong until we run the car, right?
It's like I always tell people that racing, there's so much to it. The race itself is just 1/3 of it. The other 2/3 are the journey there and the journey home. There's so much that could happen at any one of those points that you accept the fact that you're just buying the ticket and taking the ride.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. It's so true. And the preparation ahead of time is so important. I mean, truthfully, it's been said, and it seems like a cliche, but look, yes, everything has to go right on the race weekend, and the crew's got to perform, and the between round service has to run well. Not minimizing that, but what happens in the shop ahead of time, so important. And like you said, not only that, but you got to get there, you got to get home. So there's adventures all along the way.
I was just talking to a racer at the streetcar takeover about that. And we both were in agreement that when you show up to the track, you should only be unloading the car ready and race ready. It should be put fuel in it, put it on the charger, race it. If you've got a big dry race board stuff that you got to do, you're setting yourself up for some problems.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
And I could only imagine, with the Top Fuel car, you guys probably have a lot of fun stuff that you've got to get ready to go. What's something that that people might not realize you guys got to prepare before you even go wheels up the head to an event?
So it's funny. Some of these things can be done at the track, but you're better off not. And we go in with a more relaxed attitude when it doesn't have to happen. Example of that would be building racks, right? For us, it's Gary Scelzi said this so well so many years ago. If you put a piston in a pro stock engine, you kiss it and you welcome it to its new home. You put a piston in a Top Fuel motor, you kiss it goodbye, right? So for us, really, pistons and rods are consumables to a certain extent, not quite as much as spark plugs, but silly little things like showing up at the track with, look, we go through 16 spark plugs every run, right? So do the math, like all of a sudden, it doesn't take long before you've gone through more than 100 plugs in a weekend. So silly little things like plugs gapped, racks built, right? Like we'll show up with, some of the big teams will show up with way more than this, but we'll show up with five racks, 6 racks ready to go. Because then that way we don't have team members going through checking rods to make sure they're not twisting, bending, etc. Crush, there's rod crush. And then going through and making sure that those piston and rod assemblies are ready to be dropped in, going through the heads ahead of time and making sure that we've got enough sets of heads. God forbid we torch a head gasket or something, damage a head, damage a block. We'll go in there. Big teams will go in there 6 or 8 short blocks ready to go. We only have 3, but earlier this year we were going to the track with just 2. So we're thankful that we're going in with 3 blocks that have cranks and cams timed and ready to be put together. So not having to assemble a short block at the track. Having racks ready to go, all these things, having the heads prepared, all this stuff is key to really showing up prepared to qualify and trying to set yourself up for success.
And that's so important with cars that have, especially, nitro cars, but cars that require a lot of service because every second counts. It doesn't matter, even if it's just between qualifying rounds. If you got time to lean, you got time to clean, you have to be doing something on that car at some point.
Absolutely. And if you're prepared, then you can actually focus more on the details. And really, and I learned this from Frank Hawley years ago, the difference between good and great is it's not as big a gap as you think, and unfortunately, even in Top Fuel, the difference between good and not qualified is not a very big gap as well. So to go into a race with, prepared to be able to look at the details a little more closely. Thankfully, we've been having a lot of help from Kalitta Motorsports and Rob Flynn. They've been a huge help to us, not only from buying parts, but also from the technical aspect of helping us, improve the program. And it's been a struggle this year. I mean, really, we've had a lot of challenges. We started out blowing stuff up in Gainesville, and really it just was kind of like a combination of things, the wrong things happening at the wrong times. And so we've been able to adjust and improve, and we've made progress every event. So again, by the time this airs, we'll see what happens, but I feel pretty good going into Norwalk. I mean, even though Epping wasn't great for us, it certainly wasn't bad. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot that I think is going to be a good foundation for Norwalk for us.
Well, speaking of learn a lot, you've raced a little bit of everything on your way to the world of Top Fuel racing. A lot of people want to know, how did you start out to get to where you are? What does it take to get there?
So some of it has been some luck. I got to be honest. Luck and prayers answered, if you want to put it that way, because there certainly has been a whole lot of that. Really, I had been building a 1970 Nova that I bought from my brother-in-law as a 6-cylinder, rusted out piece of junk for $300. Literally gutted it, and I put a 12-point cage in it, back halved it, and I was building had a local engine builder here who sadly has passed away since then, but Tony File. Built a big block Chevy for me, or went through a big block Chevy I had for her, setting it up to be a 9-second car. Went to Doug Foley's school, got my competition license in 2001, but was still building the car. And look, I'm a landscaper. I've got 4 kids. Don't have a whole lot of money to be throwing at race cars. So I was like pinching pennies and building this thing one piece at a time. But the fact that I had my competition license and went to school and got my competition license in 2006, had the opportunity to start driving for a fellow by the name of Mike Gillespie. Mike was a friend of my dad's and mine. And for people who don't know, I'm a 2nd-generation racer. My dad was racing before I was born. So Mike bought this injected alcohol, 706 cubic inch Fiat altered. Really bitchin' car. It was a Brad Hadman alcohol funny car chassis. So it had carbon fiber brakes. It was a 7-second car. So it was no joke. I mean, it wasn't, it was a great place for me to build a foundation, running with the Northeast Timing Organization. And so sadly, Mike had cancer. It was in remission. The cancer came back, which actually led to a friendship that still exists to this day with Jack Beckman. I've been lucky to be friends with Jack for a long time. And so as I was driving through the nostalgia ranks, something would come up, I'd have a question, I'd get on the phone and I'd call Jack and ask his advice. So having a mentor and having someone that could provide great driving advice as I was learning, that was key along the way. And that led to, we took the car, even while Mike was sick, we took the car to Frank Hawley's school, fine-tuned our routine, learned a lot from Frank. What I learned from Frank was levels of concentration and really how to think like a winner. And that was in the fall of 2007. Sadly, in the summertime of 2008, Mike passed away. I had been buying into the car. I sold my Nova, sold all my parts, bought into the car. And then Mike, when Mike passed away, he left the car, what was left, what I would have had to have bought, left it to me in his will, and said he wanted my dad and I to keep racing together, which, again, if Mike hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am today, truthfully. Maybe it would have taken longer. I would have found a way, right? I was committed, so I was going to make it no matter what. But Mike's help was just priceless. So in Mike's memory, we continued racing on and we continued to improve. And by 2011, We won the Nitro Comp Championship. We went to 14 races and won 7 of them, believe it or not. Anytime we got out of the second round, we won the race. It was kind of crazy. It was like as soon as we got past the second round, man, we were unstoppable. Same thing in 2012. Went to 12 races and won 6. Would have repeated as champion if I would have shown up at just one more race. And that opened a lot of doors. And so I began talking with a pro team about trying to put together a deal for me to drive a Top Fuel car. Initially, actually, I approached them about driving a funny car and was encouraged to look at Top Fuel first. I've always been a fan of any nitro car. I mean, that's kind of how the nickname Nitro Joe showed up, but anything nitro, man, it was like, put me in it. Got my top alcohol dragster license with Jerry Darian in 2014. And having that opened the door for me to drive the 134 Fuel Coupe as a fuel altered owned by Ted Bryan, built by Ted Bryan and Paul Gold in the 80s, and they had bought the car back. So driving a fuel altered, going to the hot rod reunion in California and doing match races with other fuel altereds was great for the resume and an amazing experience. I mean, I always loved the fuel altereds. I didn't really get to see them in their heyday because I was just a little kid. I was born in the tail end of 1969. So, and then not only driving that car, but having the opportunity to drive for my great friend Rocky Perrone, driving nostalgia funny cars. I was driving the Frantic Ford on Nitro, match racing Bruce Larson. And really that match racing thing, I love that. That was kind of like, kind of back to the days of the 70s with the funny cars and the altereds and the match races that went on back then. So to me, that was kind of a cool deal, but it was learning on these cars and having to drive in conditions that were, while I was always put in a good car and I was always in a safe car, you'd have different track conditions you'd have to deal with. I mean, we'd be throwing curveballs left and right. So I feel like that helped me prepare for where I am right now in Top Fuel and being able to, I'm comfortable in just about any situation, so I don't get rattled, and I think that nostalgia racing foundation really helped me with that. So that's kind of, maybe more than you asked, right? But that's kind of where the story goes.
Hey, that's what the show's all about is, racers telling stories and kind of going off of that. Let's talk about the 3 fastest cars you've driven. What was it like to start out from one and go to the other and go to the other? What would kind of talk about that experience? Because I know from my own personal experience with my street car, I will never forget the first time I went a 10-second pass, a strong 10-second pass on nitrous.
Yeah.
I knew within about a second, as soon as that nitrous hit, I'm like, all right, this is going to be a fun ride. So it was like, this is different. I like this. So what was it like for you stepping up through different vehicles, the driving experience, if you will?
What's interesting about that, you look at the differences and moving up a level. And I think what most people don't realize, and I didn't realize until I was on the journey. And then once I had stepped up a couple of levels, then I kind of knew what to expect, sort of. And I'll explain that. So first car I ever took down the track, I had a 1970 Chevelle 4-speed with an M21 wide ratio trans. It was originally a 6-cylinder car, so it had a 273 10-bolt differential, right? Lucky I didn't blow the doggone thing up. And it had a 350 bored and stroked out to a 383. I'd launched the car, Raceway Park in Englishtown, launched the car between 2,500, 3,000 RPM. I just dumped the clutch and the thing would torque up and the left front wheel would come just a little bit off the ground. That was like a high 12-second, low 13-second car, go through the finish line in third gear at about 5,600 RPM, 105 miles an hour. Now, you go up to a 9-second car from there, right? That'll go through the quarter mile at 140, but you're doing 100 miles an hour at half track. Same speed, half the distance. It's like twice the car in my mind, right? I mean, because instead of doing 100 at the quarter mile, you're doing 100 at the 8. Now, go into my Fiat Altered, and I'm doing 150 at the 8th mile, right? So a 9-second car, 140, 150 at the quarter mile. Now I'm doing it at the 8th. Again, same speed, half the distance. It's kind of like twice the car. Well, then, you step up to the funny cars, the nostalgia funny cars. I'm doing 170, 180 at the 8th mile. And it's only a second quicker, right? You think, oh, it's only 1 second quicker. Well, it's fast. Well, really, it's kind of like twice the car. And then driving the top alcohol car, right? 220 miles an hour, 3.6 seconds at the 8th mile, right? Now, again, quarter mile with the alcohol car, 270, 280 at the quarter mile. Well, let me tell you, when I jumped in that Top Fuel car, I stepped on the throttle to do the burnout, and my first thought was, holy crap, this thing means business. And I never had that experience in any other car. This Top Fuel car, man, I am absolutely in awe of the power of this thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to say I'm intimidated by it. I'm not. I respect it. Love it, actually. It's absolutely amazing. But again, the 8th mile, doing 270, 280 miles an hour. So you don't even think about it, but it acts like it's twice the car, the top alcohol car, right? And the ETs aren't that much different, but in order for that to happen, you need that much more power. And if you think about it, right? These top alcohol cars making 3,500, 4,000 horsepower, and you're looking at, 10, 11,000 horsepower in the Top Fuel car. And so each time I moved up, there's a learning curve. Yeah, your brain has to get ready to adjust. And each time, like, the anticipation of what's it going to be like, what's it going to feel like, and especially in the Top Fuel car, you always wonder, you're like, all right, can I handle this? I mean, I think I can. I would go into it with confidence, but it's like, until you experience it, you got to know what it's going to feel like, and man, it did not disappoint. I mean, driving a Top Fuel car for me is just, man, it is the coolest thing on the planet. Especially, man, you launch the car and then, and it's like chaos all around you. This thing's like planting you in the seat, and then the clutch locks up, and it's like you launch all over again, and man, there's just nothing like it. So, yeah, I would do it every day if I could.
It's definitely, I would call any nitro vehicle barely controlled chaos. That's like, it is. Don't ever let someone tell you, oh, I've got that nitro car under control. No, no, it will tell you who's in charge when you least expect it.
Well, and it's amazing is just how fast things are happening. And I mean, it took me a good number of runs before I felt like I was keeping up with the car. And anybody that tells you otherwise is lying to you, truthfully. I mean, because if you do the math, right, at 200 miles an hour is 300 feet per second. Or you're doing a football field in 1 second at 200 miles an hour, right? Back to where I said from the 660, right? At the 8th mile, we're doing 270, and this thing is still accelerating. And it doesn't stop pulling all the way through. I mean, it's not like, look, you drive some of these other cars and you get to the 8th mile and it's just a fun, fast ride from there, right? This thing is just crushing you into the seat all the way until you left off the throttle. So 270 miles an hour at the 8th mile, between 660 and 1,000 feet, you're getting there in less than a second. Think about that, less than 1 second. I've heard Ron Capps say in an interview that the last part of the race just kind of happens. Kind of does. I mean, I'm driving it. Like, I know where I am. I've got my point down track. I'm steering as necessary. But boy, let me tell you, I see the 8th mile mark and I've already got my hand on the parachute lever. You know what I mean? I'm driving that last part of the track one-handed as I'm ready to push the chutes, because you're there. It's just amazing how fast everything happens.
You've driven a fuel altered. Imagine with Worsham and Hartman going over 300 in the quarter with that. Like, I would just watch that video again the other day. I'm like, that's nuts. Like, that is just like, I've mentioned that maybe every couple of shows about that. I'm in awe of what those dudes did, because that's another complete different animal right there.
Oh, that's just a whole new level of just badass. I mean, really. And I was lucky. I saw Richard. We needed the front half of the Top Fuel car updated for the rules changes this year. And I was at his shop actually, as we were on our way down to, as I was bringing the car down for Gainesville. And so before he went, he told me what they were going to do. And I was like, oh man, I was envious. I was like, I would love to do that. I would absolutely love to do that. That's just, it's gotta be insane. It's gotta be insane.
You know, they're trying to sell tickets to send people into space. I'm like, why don't y'all just sell tickets like Larry Dixon's doing, take a ride in a nitro car?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
I think you get a lot more people that would buy into that in a heartbeat.
man. And tell you what Larry's doing with that is just, I think it's the coolest thing ever. I would listen, if anyone ever wants to check it out, you know, call Larry Dixon and do the Nitro ×2, because oh man, look at the videos of people when they get out of those cars. You just can't wipe the smile off their faces. It's crazy.
You know, before we move on, I've got to hit my first sponsor here this week is Moser Engineering. Moser Engineering has been racing across 5 decades through 3 generations of family. They have also been supporting sportsman ranks since the beginning with their lightning fast 2-day turnaround. Everything that Moser makes, axles, rear end, suspension, brakes, are made in the USA with one goal in mind, so you can win. To learn more, check us out online at moserengineering.com, which the thing I love about having some of these sponsors is I could say they're kid tested and Dragzine approved, because we use a Moser Engineering rear end in our it's going to be a single turbo street car build. And we are, again, not kind to parts in this world, especially with our projects, because we push them hard, and God willing, the creek don't rise, knock on wood. Haven't had any issues with that rear end yet.
Well, it's funny. I mentioned being a landscaper and not having a whole lot of money to throw at a race car. That's why I had Moser axles in the rear end in that 9-second Nova I was building, because I knew I needed something I could count on. So yeah, you got a believer in me, man.
Yeah, that's one of those things I think a lot of people don't understand that aren't like hip to the whole racing thing, is that parts reliability is part of that, you know, I guess we call it our shield that we wear, that, you know, our parts are never going to break, and you have to believe what you put on a car, period, end of discussion.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man.
Now, your team is a small family owned operation, you know, a lot like we used to see in the early days of Nitro, when you'd see, you know, 60 top fuelers show up to a big meet. You know, what's it like in these modern days, you know, being, you know, the smaller team versus the mega team? You know, you guys roll in, you got your truck, your trailer, that's it. You don't have the hospitality tent and the food being made and everything else, unless, you know, Ma's back there cooking on the grill. So, you know, what's it like kind of being like one of these throwback teams?
Yeah, it's funny. So Leverage Racing, Bob Leverage started racing in 1959. So he was there all along and competing, you know, all throughout, you know, you know, if you want to call it I don't want to call it the heyday of drag racing, because quite honestly, with all the different forms of drag racing right now, I mean, I think drag racing is just as popular as ever. It's all taken different forms, but so for us being a small family team, hey, I like the David and Goliath example. You know, Goliath had the right tools for the job, and he got the job done, right? So I think our day is coming now. You know, whether we're going to be able to have the resources to go all the way to a final round and win or not, well, that remains to be seen. I think we got to step up in the performance aspect a little bit before we're ready to start talking about race wins. But look, I've already had 2 round wins that were there for the taking, even in Epping. You know, we were round 1 against Billy Torrance, and you know, we had a supercharger belt break. You know, it broke because, you know, we didn't, you know, we were putting cylinders out, and that was kind of rough on the belt. But he was there for the taking, you know. So I think I like our chances in a lot of aspects, and kind of with what's gone on with COVID, with reduced qualifying sessions, that's been good for us. It costs us less. Now the downside is, you know, then everybody has less opportunities to learn at the track, right? But for us being small and nimble, yet still having the help of some of the bigger teams, you know, it's I don't know if I would call it an advantage, because we got to work harder and be a little more scrappy. But you know, certainly I don't have a sponsor calling me up saying, hey, you can't say this or you can't say that. Now, I don't know if the big guys do either, right? Because I haven't been there yet. but I will tell you this, like there's nobody telling me don't be Joe Morrison, which is great. I say what I mean what I say. I don't have to worry about, being politically correct per se. Not that I go out of my way not to be. I mean, this is just who I am. Yeah, it's funny. I think we have the opportunity to learn from the other big teams, whereas, I don't think you're going to see, Kalitta and Schumacher teaming up to learn something together, right? Yet, like I said, we've gotten a lot of help from Kalitta's. We've bought some parts from Schumacher. We've bought parts from Torrance, and some of the other teams out there. I mean, so the nice thing is look, we can kind of go out there and collaborate with other teams. We get to the starting line. Of course, they want to beat us. We want to beat them. I mean, that's what it is, right? You're there to race. You're there to win. So yeah, it's funny. I don't know that I could pick out an advantage other than, just describing what it is. And then look, at the risk of sounding cliche, truthfully, I'm glad to be there. I never thought I had a shot at this. I mean, on paper, I shouldn't even be doing this. I have the money. I don't have the famous name. And because of that, I'm glad to be where I am. I mean, Gary and I, and Dan Leverage, I mean, I consider these guys friends. Now that I've gotten to know them, and in a lot of ways, we're a lot alike. We're scrappy, we're underdogs, and we're out there. The fact that we can go out there and race Torrance when they outspend us 10-1, we have a good shot at it. And to be clear, and again, we said this beforehand, I don't hold that against those guys, and I don't see that as a bad thing. You look at guys like Billy Torrance, you look at Mike Salinas, you look at Don Schumacher, you look at Connie Kalitta, you look at John Force. Every single one of those guys built what they have from the ground up. They earned it. To race with these guys, to me, it's like going to school, man. I get to see a little bit of how they did it. I'm trying to learn from them and figure out how to do that. The advantage of being a small team, I get to learn from all the big teams. And I'm not just stuck in my own little bubble.
Well, and I think that, kind of going off of that, I've talked with other people about this as well, is that, you have teams like the Torrances and others that they help other smaller teams along the way, because in general, it's in the best interest of these bigger teams to help the smaller teams, for the simple fact that they need all of you guys there racing to keep these fields full and keep things going. But at the same time, you look at someone like a Josh Hart that, you can't think, oh, that's a cute little baby bear, because, all them bears still got teeth.
For sure. Yeah. It's interesting. And like I said, they've all helped us, I don't know. We've asked John Force Racing for help yet. But I would think they would help us if we asked, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's someone like Josh is not, they seem to have a lot of resources, and they've got a great operation there. And Josh is another one. I mean, he started with nothing and built his business, with his bare hands, really, and a great team around him. So, again, I'm encouraged by all of that, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, it's great to see, your teams like the Torrances, they're helping Scott Palmer, the Laganas, they're helping all these other people, because they realize we need, they're looking at the bigger picture overall on what, fuel racing needs right now to kind of keep things going. Is we got to keep these cars moving down the track to keep the fans entertained, to keep the sponsors going,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Everybody wins on that deal.
Now, as far as with being a small team, what's it like when you guys kind of really start to hit your stride just across the board when you're a smaller team? Does it just feel that much better when things are going good on a weekend where it's not like, oh, this is our job, you're really having fun at that point, right?
Yeah, it is. It's unbelievably rewarding. And really the guys and gals we have on our team are, man, they are all heart and soul, because again, like you said, this isn't our full-time job. We do this because we love it. And when things go our way, it's unbelievably rewarding. It really is. I mean, it's funny. Some of the greatest moments we've had have been after we've overcome some kind of an obstacle. So yeah, I would think, for us, it's just that much sweeter, when things do go well.
Yeah, it definitely makes all the difference in the world. And I think it gives other people that might be a smaller team the hope to think, hey, you know what? It's me and my buddies. We know how to work one of these. We're not just Joe blows off the street, just, hey, let's go buy a Top Fuel operation off racing junk. But hey, we've maybe ran an alcohol car or something like that. Let's put a Top Fuel car together to go, have some fun.
Yeah, and that's really how the leverages came up. They were running an A fuel car, and they decided to make the move to Top Fuel, and they've been continually improving ever since. And my goal with them has been to help them, try to bring in the resources to bring the operation to the next level. And with my friendships over at Kalidas and the help we've gotten from them, we're gaining the parts and the pieces we need. Performance on track hasn't really shown it yet, because we've been really starting from scratch with bigger fuel pump, better clutches, and some better parts. Yeah, we're real close to really surprising some people.
And something else I just thought of, you mentioned earlier, you've done some match racing back in the day as well. Do you guys ever, as a smaller team, get approached by tracks to come do match races or exhibition runs to come kind of put butts in seats?
Yeah. So the team has done match racing in Ontario at Cayuga. The problem is right now the border's closed, or it's not closed. You got to quarantine for 14 days, and I forget what all the regulations are, but it makes it impossible for us to do that. They had, up until last year, every year in the summertime, they would match race up at Cayuga. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. I don't know that it's out of the question yet, but that event would only be a few weeks away, so I don't know that that's going to happen. We would love to do some more match racing. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we're kind of looking for those opportunities right now, because for us, it gives us an opportunity to get more laps in the car, and potentially try something out that maybe we would or wouldn't get to try out at a national event. So we don't get approached often, but there are a couple of things, and truthfully, yeah. So if any racetracks are watching, they want a Top Fuel car, come find us.
Well, yeah, you'd figure that, racetracks would be all about that, trying to bring in that extra, like that dog and pony show. Because I remember my dad talking about back in the day, the pro stock guys that come in a match race, and you hear some of the old school nitro guys talk about, they made, before there was 3,000 NHRA national events, that they made their extra money match racing at local tracks that probably shouldn't have had nitro cars on, but you know what, the gig paid.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I would love to do more of that. Of course, the NHRA schedule makes it tough. But for us, the perfect opportunity is the Western Swing. Like we don't have the big budget to go there. Costs us way too much. And as a volunteer team to go to, Colorado, Sonoma, and then now this year, instead of going up to Seattle, going down to LA for, the LA area for Pomona, we just can't afford to do it. So all of a sudden, we've got 2 months where we're looking for places to run, so
and it's all about data. Even if you're on a track that's not national event prep, guess what? You can learn something there, and you can play with something, even if it's you're only running the car hard to 100 feet. Well, guess what? You learn something there that you can take to the next level, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It would have to be, it would have to be so far off for us not to learn something. Yeah, we can, and we have. Look, when I was licensing and we were at Bradenton licensing, and then we finished up my licensing at Maple Grove. But you know, it was a pro mod race. It wasn't even, you know, I mean, there was, you know, and that made our life a little easier. But at Bradenton did a great job too. We learned at that track too. So yeah, anywhere we go, we can learn something.
Before we kick this into our final gear for the show, I got to talk about Procharger, our final sponsor this episode. For 25 years, Procharger has been an industry's leading aftermarket supercharger manufacturer by designing, engineering, and building the most powerful, reliable, and advanced centrifugal superchargers on the market. No matter if you're looking for 3,500 horsepower for a record-setting Pro Mod or looking for a DIY system for your street car, truck, or motorcycle, Procharger has a perfect system for you. For more information on all the ways you can bolt on 40, 50, 60, or even 100% more horsepower to your ride, visit procharger.com. Now, kind of going into the fun aspect of it, you know, I was just recently at a street car takeover race, you know, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's literally like really cool, fast street cars. And it's interesting, you just talked about Procharger. There's Prochargers, turbos. It's amazing to see, like, at that grassroots level. I think you mentioned this earlier about how well drag racing is doing, like fast streetcar racing, like legit streetcar racing is on the rise again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's awesome. You know, my one thing is, and look, maybe I'm sensitive to this because, you know, a person that I was friends with in high school lost her life street racing. You know, my big thing is, you know, let you know, as much as possible, let's keep it on the track. You know what? One of the reasons I'm a big fan of NHRA and always have been is providing a safer place to race. You know, so, but man, I love that stuff, and I'm so impressed with power and then putting that power down to the ground with these fast street cars. I think it's the coolest thing, man. I think it's awesome. And you know, listen, as far as I'm concerned, I just want to see drag racing continue to grow. You know, I love seeing the turbo cars. I love superchargers. I mean, any and all of it, truthfully. You know, any power adder you want to throw at it. You know, I just think it's cool.
Oh, the thing is that there was everything from literally guys that looked like they had a, a C7 Corvette that they threw some drag radials on that they just picked up and they are having a good time, all the way to basically race cars that were made into street cars. But it's cool and impressive to see, like, how, the fastest street car stuff that was kind of like a dog and pony show years ago is
Yeah.
starting to really make a comeback again. And what's funny is that these almost showroom cars are going as fast as what some of those cars were. It's kind of mind bending.
Yeah. Technology and the advances in technology. When I was, you know, in high school and whatever, I could not even imagine being able to show up in, you know, and go out and buy a street car that'll run nines. You know, I mean, it's just mind blowing, or quicker, right, anymore. But yeah, it's just awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to see it.
Now, you're involved with some great organizations outside of drag racing that are, not what you would consider your typical kind of deals that would be involved in drag racing. Why did you decide to kind of bring them into the sport?
So I actually co-founded an organization called Right to Breathe, and I'm sure that's one of the things you're talking about. So my dad, you know, again, kind of back to, I never thought I had a shot being a pro in drag racing because my dad had to give it up when my brother and I were young. I mean, we'd still go to the races, we'd still help out other friends, but he didn't have a race car himself. You know, when I was in grade school, middle school, high school, you know, I mean, we were always going to the track and we were always still helping people. but we couldn't afford to do it. You know, my dad was a plumber, and just trying to make enough money to support the family was all he could do. And so when I finally gave racing back to him, especially when, like I said, when I mentioned SB and driving the Fiat Altered, and my dad and I, and Mike, the three of us were basically the team. That's when my dad was diagnosed with COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's an umbrella term that covers several different types of lung diseases, including emphysema and chronic bronchitis. But what happened was my dad didn't get diagnosed until he'd already lost more than half of his lung function. More than half of his lung function. So I just thought that was tremendously unfair. This guy that did everything he could to do right by his family, finally, when he's able to do what he loves to do, he can't do it because he's living with lung disease. So we started Right to Breathe to provide free lung screenings. It's a simple test called spirometry. We like to say, put your lungs on the dyno. It's like a dyno pull for your lungs, right? Take a deep breath, you blow out into this machine, and it measures volume. It measures what's called FVC, forced vital capacity, and your FEV1, forced expirative volume in the first 1 second of your out breath. And it takes the data and tells you whether there's a problem or not. So we can actually help people find out early, because if you catch COPD early, you can treat it and you can stop the progression of it. But like my dad had lost more than half his lung function. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. So for us, there's a clock ticking, right? And there's people that are at risk, and it's not just from smoking. That's a part of it. But, I'm at risk working, because I worked as a landscaper. And even though I used a respirator, then cutting concrete, I mean, people working in dusty, dirty environments, that sort of thing, kind of puts you at risk. So we want to make sure people can keep racing as long as possible. And in order to do that, right, you got to know what's going on with your lungs, because like I said, once you lose that lung function, it doesn't come back. So we have righttobreathe.org. That's RIGHT, the number 2, BREATHE.org. And I'm really fortunate that some of our sponsors are supporting and helping support Right to Breathe. DA Lubricants in Penn Grade 1. We're working on a program where they're actually helping bring money back to Right to Breathe to help us do more patient outreach and more free lung screenings at race events. We're looking to do one at the Maple Grove National event again. Now that ideally COVID is kind of coming to a close. I mean, we're still not completely out of the woods yet, but now that it's safer to start, talking about doing lung screenings again, we're looking to pick that back up and do more of it. So, that again, that's a big part of I want to be able to give back to the racing community. I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do what I'm doing. And truthfully, if my dad had been diagnosed earlier, it's very likely he'd still be alive. He passed away in 2016. We really had 10 great years of a lot of racing together. But he never got to see me race in Top Fuel. He got to see me race the Fuel Altered and the funny cars, but I started really searching, and working diligently to get to the pro level and to drive in Top Fuel in 2013. Dad saw 3 years worth of effort and no results, so my thought is, look, if I can help someone else live better and live longer, then it's a great way to honor my father's legacy.
And I think that's very important. I think it demonstrates something that a lot of people I guess in the racing where they might not understand or take for granted. It's just, for the most part, how giving most racers are, whether it's, doing through charity work, whatever they can, or helping a fellow competitor. I think it's part of what makes motorsports and drag racing so great, is that you don't stand there and watch someone not to be able to do something or go without. You do what you can to help them when you can.
Absolutely. And you put it so well. It really is, I'm not the only one doing stuff like this, right? As a matter of fact, I see examples everywhere in racing of people doing what they can to give back, whether, like you said, to other competitors, or whether it's give back to the community. I mean, look at what Terry Chandler did, with the Make-A-Wish car and with the Infinite Hero Foundation car, and how she supported that. And then her husband even continued that after her passing. There's so many people out there that are doing great things in the community. And this is just personal to me, man. It's no, I'm not doing it because it's a cliche thing to do. This really means something to me, and there's a real problem that needs to be addressed, and why not just do something about it, right? I mean, I'm a firm believer that if you sit there waiting for someone else to do something, you'll wait forever, right? I mean, yeah, maybe someone else will pick up on it, and I hope they do, right? And I hope that there'll continue to be more people that will either jump on board with us at Right to Breathe or do it in their own way. But thankfully, the racing community is full of people that give back, and I'm proud to do what I can and in my own little way.
Now, switching gears again a little bit, you mentioned you drove fuel altereds, which again are some of my, again, love to watch those things. Part of the reason is, they're awesome. And part of the reason is they are literally like, again, barely on the edge of control. Do you have any stories of driving a fuel altered where you went into the sudden realization of this is a little sketchy? Now you can go back and tell a story now where everything turned out okay, but there was a point during a run where it was like, this is going bad in a hurry.
Yeah. So it's funny. I didn't mention earlier driving Mike Harrigan's Fool's Gold funny car, and he's got a fuel altered body for that thing, and I was driving that thing at a match race in West Palm, and that thing really shook the tires something fierce. That was interesting, but that wasn't one of those moments of like, oh crap, I'm in trouble here. That was just kind of like, well, you got to deal with it. But hit high gear and hope it comes out of the shake, and it didn't. But I guess really there have been a couple times, right? So match racing Randy Bradford at Dragway 42 in 2019, I think. So
it was after they redid the track.
Yes. And so that was interesting. I match raced Brian Hope in the Rat Trap first run. Second run, it was me and Randy. And I really some of the coolest people I've ever met, honestly. I really respect and admire them all. So Randy and I are lined up, do the burnouts, we back up. I'm in the right lane, Randy's in the left lane. Launch the car, and for whether there was just better track prep or what, but the tire grabbed. I mean, it really grabbed. And the big Hillborn injector. I mean, literally, like I'm looking through this little thing and I got to look through around one side of the injector or the other, depending on what lane I'm in. So in the right lane, I'm looking around the left side of the injector. So I can see Randy launch the car, and the next thing I see is clear blue sky. This thing had wheelie bars that were kind of like the spring-loaded wheelie bars. So this thing just planted itself, and I'm like, all right, I can see the wall. I can see the other wall. I'm looking up at the clear blue sky, and really the front wheels were, I want to say they were maybe 2 feet in the air, right? So I mean, it was up pretty well for a fuel altered that's like sky high. Man, I'm like, I'm still going. I'm like, I know I'm past 60 foot. Like the clutch is starting to lock up, and I'm like, and this thing ain't coming down. And so I'm like, look, I'm like, if I don't lift, man, like I'm going to break the wheelie bars. Something's going to go wrong in a hurry. So I tried to lift, kind of gently to not slam the front end on the ground. And luckily it came down all right. It pretty hard, but not terribly hard. We didn't break anything. And I look up, and where I see Randy is he is just then tapping the wall on the one side. It because Randy, like, he kept it in his lane, but it's like, here I am standing the thing on the back bumper. Randy's got the thing, scraping his headers on the wall. I'm like, yeah, if that doesn't scream fuel altereds, what does, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Fortunately, that one ended well, right? I mean, Randy's car wasn't too hurt, and we were all set to come back and make another run, so we were good there. I've had a couple of moments where it's just like the car would just make a move, and it's funny with that 134 fuel coupe, it actually had the hot rod front end with the 4 bars and the single monoleaf spring with shocks. And at one point we had it tied down and solid, but Ted had decided that he wanted to have the suspension active again because it was really a little more harsh, and the front end would bounce around a little bit. And so with that car, is if it started to get out of shape, after my incident at the 2015 California Hot Rod Reunion, where I did stuff it into the wall, it's like when that thing got out of shape, man, there was a fine line between I've got this and it's got me. And again, when I crossed that line in 2015, there's video of that all over the place. I was racing Brett Henry, who sadly passed away a couple years later. I think it was 2017 at the Hot Rod Reunion. The car was making a move on that run in 2015. Car was making a move to the center line. I had a bit of left correction in it. Just had the wheel, I pull high gear. It's still going. And I had hole shotted Brett, and I could hear him, but I couldn't see him. And so I knew I was heading for the center line, and I figured I'd better lift. Well, I abruptly lifted off the throttle. And when I did, the car dove to the right front and the back end snapped around. And, the unfortunate part was at half track, I was doing about 160 and basically stuffed it nose first into the wall. And so that, my friends, is why you wear a Hans device, because that sucker's, I'm convinced the Hans probably saved my life that day, because that was a hard hit to the front. I was bruised up, black, blue, yellow, purple, like anything you can imagine from the belts. But well, like I said, we were lucky. Rebuilt the car. We came back at the Hot Rod Reunion the following year and had some great match races, and we ran the car for another 3-4 years after that. So those were a couple of the incidents. I mean, there's a couple little things at different tracks with the Cecil County. We were on a great pass. I'm sure it would have been a high 6-second run at over 200 miles an hour. Hit a bump at 1,000 feet, and man, I had a whole handful of steering wheel trying to keep that thing from wrecking. There's some video of that, but I think that was either 2018 or 2019 at Cecil County. I think it was 2019. Yeah, because I lifted at 1,100 feet and still ran a 704 at like 184, and the car usually would go through it at like 198 or something like that. But so it's always a fun time with a fuel altered, man. You pretty much got to be ready for anything, at any moment.
I have shot fuel altereds a couple times, and I have seen those things where it looks like they look a lot like an outlaw sprint car on pavement trying to go down the track, as that dude is in there sawing on that wheel as delicately as you can saw on a wheel, because you don't want to overcorrect, and you hear that pedaling, and they're just trying to get that car down the track. And it's at that point where a lot of times I wish I was in the stands as a fan so I could see the whole ballet take place. But it's different when you're trackside and you see those cars trying to give the driver fits. It puts a whole new spin on what it takes to make those things work.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, you watch it. Different perspectives provide a different opportunity for point of view, right? So from what you see in the stands, you really get to see more of the run. If you watch from behind the car, you can't really tell from in the stands just how much these things are moving around. Watch it from behind, and you're like, holy crap, man, it's driving all over the place. So, that's every perspective, right, provides its own insights.
Yeah, you haven't lived until you've seen a pro mod make a move at the top end at 250 plus mile an hour that a door car shouldn't move. Like, a door car shouldn't make a move like that. It shouldn't physically be able to do that. And somehow the driver saves it afterwards. I'm like, I want to go fast, but there comes a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm not ready for that yet.
It's funny. I would absolutely get in a pro mod. My wife, on the other hand, she's like, nah, I don't want you driving one of those things. So, I'm like, you know what? I'll count my blessings. She's all right with me driving the Top Fuel car. And so,
It's funny. I had Ty Tharp on, and I asked him what he's scared of because he's a Nitro Harley rider. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm like, whatever these dudes are scared of, I need to be triple scared of. And he was like, I don't know about pro mods. I'm like, that's funny now that the two things that scare people the most are pro mods and Nitro Harleys. I'm like, that says a
Yeah.
lot for the people that get on or get in those vehicles.
Yeah, I tell you what, I would me personally, I would put the Nitro Harley up above the Pro Mod as far as holy cow. I don't know if I would get on that thing because you know, I'm friends with Bob Malloy and have a lot of respect for Ty and all these guys that ride these Nitro Harleys. Man, those guys are you know, they carry their what's around in a wheelbarrow as far as I'm concerned. Man, they've got brass ones.
Well, Ty said they're talking about putting blowers on these things. I'm like, why? Why? Do you, that's like giving a Tyrannosaurus Rex a laser. Why do you have to make something a better killing machine?
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's just insane. The Prochargers they're putting on those things now.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I've seen Prochargers on bikes. I'm like, you know, turbo leader bikes. I'm like, y'all are just, you're nuts. I've
Yeah.
seen those guys in the XDRA, Jason Miller's deal, those swing arm turbo bikes at half track. You know, they're riding the wheelie at half track, going, you know,
yeah.
stupid fast. I'm like, that's my limit. That is my drag racing apocalypse cutoff. Anything on two wheels, I'm like, you know what? That's where I stop. That's my internal safety mechanism going, hey, dummy, don't do that.
Yeah, I'll take my 30-year-old electric glide out for a cruise and we'll just keep it at that.
Yeah. So I always like to throw some fun questions at my guests, and we're getting to that point of the show where I get to throw that at you. And, you know, I give people sometimes unlimited bank accounts. I'm going to give you the keys to the Dragzine Podcast time machine. And if you could travel through any time, any era in Nitro race, what era would you go to and why would you go there?
Oh man. Kind of a tough question because I really like I would want to experience the 60s because well I wasn't born yet and didn't get to see that. Now you know what I'd have to go with and I kind of got to do it but not really. And I say that because having driven nostalgia funny cars, I would want to be a funny car racer in the mid 70s and into the 80s. There was so much going on. The match racing, the national event scene was growing. You know, look, I and it's funny, I got to tell Pam this, Jungle Pam, but Jungle Jim was a huge influence on me. I was just a little kid when he died. But I was at the only national event that he won at Englishtown, you know, and I remember that as a kid. But I picked my competition number 171 because Jungle Jim was 117. I was a huge fan of, and still am, of the Snake, Mongoose, Gordy Bonin, Dale Puldey. You know, and fortunate that, you know, I've gotten to speak to some of these guys. I never got to meet Mongoose, but talked to Dale several times, you know, bought some nitro from him when we were licensing in the Top Fuel car. You know, I met the Snake twice and getting to know some of these guys a little bit, you know, is for me is fantastic. Was just talking with Al Segrini up in Epping. But that era of funny car racing, man, it was just hardcore, man. And with the nostalgia cars, like you really have to drive them. Not that these big show cars, you're not driving them today. Of course you are. But you know, just that whole era, man, I think was just awesome. Dry hops, you know, long smoky burnouts, the whole barnstorming across the country doing match racing, like, yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat, man. I think that would be the coolest thing ever.
It's very hard to put into words what those guys were like, and it's the only thing I can ever think of is like during those eras is mythical. It's like superhero level. Like these cars were not like nearly as safe and refined. I mean, they were like literally like bull riders with an engine block. That's literally what they were.
It was definitely safer than the 60s. And funny cars didn't show up. And, you know, I'm sure everybody knows the history. The AFX cars really came into their own in the 70s. But oh yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, there's the downside to all that. You know, I mean, wearing the face masks and all that, but you know, yeah, it was mythical is a great word for it. Yeah.
Like I love to go back through sometimes and watch some of the old school stuff, and I just, you know, you'll see these nostalgia cars, the ones that are like just showpieces now because they're not, you know, they didn't update them, you know. And it's
Yeah.
like you look at those cars, it's like, man, how did the how like just how did that work, you know, with that much horsepower?
Yeah, yeah, it was a different world, man. You know, I saw a little tiny glimpse of it. The Cassidy brothers were a New Jersey funny car team. Their shop was right down the street from where I lived in New Providence. My dad used to help them, you know, and so I saw a little bit of it, you know. But again, I was a little kid, you know, I was a little kid, so I only saw, you know, little bits and pieces of it.
Well, Joe, our time here is coming to an end, and I like to give my guests their opportunity to kind of, you know, pull off the old John Force and thank all their sponsors and, you know, run wild in the streets, Hulkamania style. So I'll turn it over to you so you can thank all your sponsors, tell people where to learn more about your racing up and everything else. So, floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome. So it's funny. We got a bunch of great partners that have really made all this possible. My friend Ed Krajewski, EJK Insurance. So if you're in Pennsylvania or New Jersey and you need race car insurance or just regular insurance for your business or your street car, Ed's fantastic. Penn Grade 1 and DA Lubricants. I'm wearing the DA Lubricants hat. We run the Nitro 70 Penn Grade 1 oil in the Top Fuel car. And last race out didn't hurt a bearing, you know. So, you know I trust them. And certainly I'm looking to help them grow their business, and because that helps the race team. So, you know, certainly the Penn Grade 1 folks have been a huge help. Specialized Autocraft, you know, that Top Fuel car's actually got paint on it. It's not a wrap. And the folks at Specialized did an amazing job there in Chatham, New Jersey. Race software. And for your street car guys, you got to go to race.software because they have spring and shock complex. It's actually complex physics modeling that you can enter your stuff in, and you can make thousands of runs virtually on the computer or on your phone, test out your springs and shocks without even turning a tire. So great partners for us there. Dime PSI and their high pressure lines. Americana Global, that's how we keep that paint on that car looking good with the Mystic Spray and Shine. So they're been a huge help for us. My friends Haskell and Beth at Diversitech. That's the titanium shielding that's been around on the roll cage for us. And Diversitech's been a great help for us over the years. Those are some of the most important folks, truthfully. Edge Welding. So for any of your folks that do fabrication and welding, Edge actually makes these killer welding cups that will actually attach to your TIG torch and focus that inert gas to have a better weld. So Edge Welding Supply is one of our newer partners, and we're glad to have them on board. They're such a great family, and they provide such amazing service. So Edge Welding Supply. And also, which is pretty cool, as I reach down, we've got Chuck Norris, man. We've got C-Force Water. So C-Force has been a great partner for us, and it's cool. I figure, man, if you've got the most badass accelerating vehicle on the planet, you got to hydrate with the most badass water on the planet from C-Force Water. So the C-Force folks have been awesome, and Chuck and Gina Norris and their son Tyler has been fantastic. So that's been a whole lot of fun. And the partners that have been with Leverage Racing, High Tech Cam and Hap Whitlock, be where we are without High Tech Cam, without Mark Jones and Mark's mixers. Mark has provided so much help to that race team since before I was there. A great friend and a great guy. And without Mark's support, we wouldn't be there. Superior Engine does all our machine work for us up in Michigan. They've been supporting Gary and the team for years. So again, you know, that kind of help for us has been absolutely huge. So, you know, again, I don't want to, you know, leave out the especially the partners that have been with the team that have helped get it to the point where it is today. And like I said, High Tech Cam, Superior Engine, Mark's Mixers have all been critical parts of that team for years. And I'm glad to get to know these guys and see how amazing they are. So yeah, it's a group effort. Again, you know, we are a smaller team, and you know, so sometimes a lot of these smaller partners have been great for us. But you know, and we actually had some fans and businesses in New England that had supported us. JSJ and RGA Tire and Auto, TAC Industries. Oh my gosh, and I'm leaving somebody out. Who am I leaving out? I lost on force. But yeah, so it's again, without each and every one of these companies, we wouldn't be able to do. My gratitude is with them, and I certainly encourage folks to check out any Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The easiest way to find me in any of those platforms is just type in CH3NO2 Joe. So Nitro Joe on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're doing some YouTube stuff too, but look me up. You know, I actually check the messages there myself. I do have some help with the social media as well. So it's not always me, but most of the time it is. And I try to make sure that I take the time to communicate with anybody and everybody. So always looking to make new friends, find new fans, and you know, have a great time, man, because at the end of the day, this is drag racing, for God's sakes. I think it's the greatest sport in the world, and enjoy sharing it with other people. So I appreciate being on the show, Brian, and glad you asked me to be here, man.
Definitely appreciate you coming on. Of course, I've got to thank our sponsors, Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, Procharger, MSD, Flowmaster, Holly, Comp Cams, Fuel Air Spark Technology, also known as FAST, Eldebrock, Moser Engineering, all make it possible for me to come on here and have the most fun to talk to guests and talk about drag racing. Joe, I appreciate you coming on the show so much, and look forward to see you at the track this year.
Sounds great, man. Looking forward to seeing you. And you know, I just encourage everybody to, whether it's any form of drag racing, go support your local track, because without those local tracks, you know, we'll lose the sport. You know, you'll find me on off weekends. You'll find me at Island Dragway, my home track, or Atco. I just did a match race in Rocky's Funny Car a couple of weeks ago at Atco. So, you know, go out and support your local drag strip.
Couldn't have said it right myself. We'll end it on that note. We'll see you soon, Joe.
Take care. Thanks.